So here's a 2004 Mini Cooper S, and the strut mounts are totally blown out. This side's the worst side on this car. You can actually see the crack in there. It's pretty bad. That one's like totally blown out. This side's not as bad. There's kind of a micro crack in there that you can't really see. And also, the strut towers are mushroomed. All these bolts are supposed to be straight up and down. But as you can see, they're kind of pointing off to the side. A lot of people make this into a harder job than it actually is. You don't need to take the struts totally off the car to do this. First thing to do is to remove all of these 1/2-inch nuts, and then take a flathead or something and pry that little cap off. You have a nut in there. You're going to need to use a 13/16 socket. I'm sure a metric one might work better, but this works too. Some vice grips over the socket, and a 6mm Allen key that goes in the top of the strut pin, I guess you could say, so that the strut pin doesn't spin around when you're trying to loosen the nut. And if you do all this while the struts are still on the car, you won't need a spring compressor, because the springs are already compressed. So take those nuts out, then jack the car up, and that'll decompress the springs slowly and safely. Well, so much for the Allen key. You don't really need it. I was misled. So here it is, about 6:30 in the morning. I just got off a 12-hour night shift, and I can finally finish this upper strut mount project. So where was I? Oh yes. Take off these 3 nuts and the center pin nut on both sides. So now lift up both sides of the car. See, I got a jack under each side. And as you lift, and once the tires come off the ground, the center pin is going to drop down. You might have to push the wheel down a little bit. Then you should be able to get the strut mounts out of there. push down on the wheel now. That's not going to come all the way out, so we still have to lift up the other side. See, that one came right out. You can see the whole upper strut mount is sinking in there. And this side also came out. And with your wheels off, you would definitely want to set up some jack stands for your own safety and also to protect your car from damage. So now what you need to do is take both of your hands and pull down and squeeze on the spring and pull the strut out. Just like that. You can see the strut mount still in the car. And it's only stuck there because of the mushroomed strut tower and these crooked bolts. So, so you can see the difference between the old one and the new one. A sealed bearing, so you don't have to worry about grease and grease caps. So you can actually see this one, how bent it actually is. On this one, perfectly straight. So the next thing I need to do on this car is use a big hammer and a block of wood and flatten these strut towers out. And then once you've finished hammering your strut towers flat enough, you can take your new strut mount put it up in there and line up the holes and get your nuts on there so the mount stays on. Grease cap from the old bearing will be on there. You can take that off. There's another washer under there and you can leave that on. Now that the strut mount, the upper strut mount is in place, just push your strut back in place. And here's a tip, make sure you don't spin these too much because there's a certain orientation that they need to be in. They have certain angles and everything. This hasn't been spun. It's fine. You can tell the orientation of how the spring is supposed to be by these rubber grommets. There's kind of a cutout here and the spring sets in it here, so you know exactly how the spring is supposed to be in there. So you really don't have to worry about getting it all crooked as long as you don't spin it around and around and around if you're going to be playing with it or something. Now once you push your spring back into place, take the nuts off of your mount and let it rest on top of the strut. Then you're going to need to set up some spring compressors. Compress the spring enough so that the pin goes through the bearing hole and you can thread that center nut onto there. Now once you have the nut threaded on there, you can remove the spring compressors and then put a jack under the control arm and lift this whole thing up until the upper strut mount bolts are through the holes there. And before you jack it up, you want to attach both strut mounts to both struts on both sides. And then you can kind of lift both sides at once. Jack them up both at once, because that sway bar is going to screw the whole thing up if you try to do them one at a time. Now the thing about lifting one side is that it's going to affect the other side because of the sway bar. When you lift this side, the other side's going to want to lift also. So make sure you have your new mount installed in your other side, the opposite side that you're working on. Here is my other mount. Now that they're both in, you can put the nuts on for a final time. So the strut shaft bolt to strut mount nut gets torqued to 47 foot-pounds, and the strut mount to strut tower nuts each get torqued to 25 foot-pounds. And once you've done that, pop your caps back on, put your wheels back on, and you're good to go. And also, sorry for the shitty video. I just did a 12-hour night shift and it's now 10 a.m. So, yeah. I really just wanted to prove that this could be done without taking the struts off, and I think I did that. If anyone tells you otherwise, show them this video. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.